I need to get this off my chest because I honestly don't know who else I can talk to, and I feel like I'm slowly going crazy. I'm using a throwaway account to keep things private. I'm 34, and I've been married to my husband, let's call him Mark, he's 35, for 8 years. We've got a stable life together, we own our home, both have steady jobs, and generally keep to ourselves. That's how we like it, simple, quiet, predictable. The person at the center of all this is Mark's younger sister, Chloe, who's 29. Mark and Chloe have never really been close, not because of one big falling out, but more from a long buildup of personality clashes, bad decisions on her part, and what Mark often describes as her flair for chaos and self-destruction. They'd stay civil at family events back when we lived nearby, but outside of those, they barely talked. After we moved across the country 5 years ago, their contact dropped even more. From Mark's perspective, their parents have always coddled Chloe and made excuses for her, which only added to the tension. To protect his own peace, Mark mostly kept his distance. We haven't seen her in person since the move, though we'd occasionally get updates through his parents, usually about her latest meltdown, job she quit, or relationship drama. Then about 2 months ago, Mark got a call from Chloe late at night. She was sobbing uncontrollably, saying she'd finally left her husband, David. They'd been married for 2 years, but we barely knew anything about the guy. Chloe never shared much unless she needed something. According to her, David had become emotionally abusive and controlling, and things had gotten so bad she feared for her safety. She said she grabbed a bag and drove off, ending up in some motel a few towns away from where they lived, several states from us. She claimed she couldn't go to her parents because David had people in their town, which sounded odd to us, and she asked if she could come stay with us. Just for a bit, she said, long enough to get back on her feet. Mark was hesitant. He hadn't forgotten her past behavior, how unreliable she was, how she always left a mess behind for others to deal with. But her story sounded serious, and even though they weren't close, the idea of his sister being alone and possibly in danger really shook him. I felt awful for her too. Anyone fleeing an abusive partner deserves support. Mark and I talked it over for a long time. He felt like we couldn't just turn her away, and I agreed. Giving her a safe place to land, just for a while, felt like the right thing to do. We figured a few weeks, maybe a month tops, would be enough time for her to figure out her next steps, maybe find a job, maybe get into therapy. So we said yes. Chloe showed up 2 days later, looking completely drained, carrying one suitcase and a backpack. That first week, she barely spoke. She mostly stayed in the guest room, sleeping a lot, and she really did seem shaken. She didn't open up much about David or what had happened, and when we asked, she'd just say vague things about being scared and how he tried to control her money and friendships. We tried to be supportive. I cooked. Mark offered gentle suggestions, job listings, support groups. We gave her space, but made it clear we were there if she needed us. But by the second week, things started shifting. She said she needed to relax and clear her head, which quickly turned into her buying bottles of wine. Before long, it became a nightly thing. After Mark and I went to bed, she'd stay up in the living room drinking and watching TV. The next mornings, we'd find empty bottles on the coffee table and wine-stained glasses left out. Then she started asking for money. First it was small $20 here, $40 there, for essentials or bus fare to look for work. But we never really saw any signs she was actually job hunting. She said David had frozen their accounts. Later, she said they never had joint accounts to begin with, he just somehow controlled her finances. Mark gave her some cash at first, feeling guilty. By week 3, her behavior was getting worse. She'd disappear for hours, sometimes whole evenings, saying she was clearing her head or meeting a friend. She'd come back late, sometimes obviously drunk, talking loudly on her phone in the hallway or stumbling through the front door. One night around 2 a.m., Mark and I were woken by loud banging. We went downstairs and found her trying to unlock the front door, but she was too drunk to get the key in. When she saw us, she just laughed and said she needed some air. The whole house reeked of alcohol. Her room turned into a complete disaster. Piles of clothes, dirty dishes left for days, and the guest bathroom was constantly a mess, makeup all over the counter, wet towels on the floor. We tried to talk to her gently about house rules and being respectful, especially late at night. She'd apologize, maybe tidy up a little, but it never lasted. The money requests kept coming and started getting bigger. She said she needed new clothes, toiletries, fees for job applications. Some of it sounded sketchy. Eventually, Mark started saying no. He told her she had to figure out how to manage the money she had and focus on getting a job. That didn't go over well. She'd either go silent and sulk or make snarky comments about how we had no idea what she'd been through. Around week 6, she told us she'd gotten a part-time gig waitressing at a bar. At first, we were relieved. Maybe this was her turning a corner. But instead, it seemed to just give her more money for partying. She started going out almost every night, either after work or on her nights off. Then came the strangers. Twice in the past 2 weeks, she's brought men back to the house in the middle of the night. These weren't old friends, they were guys she just met at work or out drinking. The first time, we woke up at 3 a.m. to loud laughter downstairs. Mark went down and found her in the living room with a man we'd never seen, both of them drinking. Mark told the guy it was late and asked him to leave. Then he told Chloe flat out, bringing strangers into our house, especially at night, wasn't okay. Chloe didn't take it well. She got defensive, said she was an adult and it was just a friend, and accused Mark of treating her like a child. The fight escalated before she stormed off to her room. The second time was just a few nights ago. It was quieter, but I happened to get up around 4 a.m. to use the bathroom and caught her letting someone out the front door. The next morning when I asked about it, she first denied it, then said he was just walking her to the door, and finally admitted he'd been inside briefly. Then she accused me of spying on her. To make matters worse, Mark and I have started picking up on holes in her original story about David. When Mark carefully asked her about certain details that didn't quite line up, she'd either dodge the question, change the subject, or accuse him of not believing her in siding with David. We're constantly on edge. Every night feels tense. Mark and I whisper to each other in our bedroom, trying to figure out what the hell to do. He's angry at how she's acting and how she's treating our home, but there's still part of him that feels like he has to protect her because if what she told us was true, he doesn't want to abandon her when she's vulnerable. Mark feels torn about the idea of asking Chloe to leave. If she really has nowhere safe to go, the thought of kicking her out eats at him. I understand where he's coming from, but at this point, my empathy has worn down to the nub. What I feel now is mostly frustration and honestly, suspicion. Her behavior just doesn't match what you'd expect from someone who's been traumatized and is trying to piece their life back together. Instead, it feels like she's running away from consequences and hiding behind a serious accusation to avoid accountability. Our house doesn't feel like our own anymore. It's like we're always on edge, waiting for the next mess to clean up, literally and figuratively. Chloe flips between being sugary sweet when she wants something, and cold or sulky when she doesn't get her way. She keeps her distance from us unless she's asking for money or griping about her job or how unfair her life is. Right now, here's what we're dealing with. She's living in our home, barely working her part-time job at the bar, blowing money on booze and nights out, completely ignoring our house rules, bringing strange men home, and shifting details in her story whenever something doesn't add up. Mark and I are completely drained. Our patience is shot, and my faith in her whole story about David is almost gone. I feel horrible even saying that doubting someone who says they've been abused feels wrong. But the more time passes, the harder it is to keep believing her. This is taking a toll on everything: our marriage, our peace of mind, even our sense of safety in our own home. Does it make me a bad person to question whether Chloe's really telling the truth about David? I honestly don't know. But if anyone has advice on how to move forward from here, I'd really appreciate it. Update 1. Thanks to everyone who responded to my first post. Reading your comments and private messages helped more than I can explain. It was comforting, in a way, to see that others didn't think I was completely off base for having doubts. And it helped me realize just how serious and unsustainable this whole situation had become. Some of you asked for more background about Mark and Chloe's relationship. Here's the gist: it's always been strained. Mark sees her as someone who's constantly manipulated people, especially their parents, to get what she wants, no matter the damage it causes. She's bounced from job to job, apartment to apartment, and relationship to relationship, usually needing help or bailouts along the way. Mark eventually pulled back years ago because the drama just never stopped, and he didn't want to spend his life playing the rescuer. Their parents, on the other hand, often stepped in to smooth things over or excuse her behavior, which only made things worse. That's part of why Mark was hesitant when she first called, but hearing her say she'd been abused was like a switch flipped. He couldn't ignore that. As for where Mark stands now, he's done making excuses. Watching her behavior with his own eyes, especially the part where she brings strange men into our house in the middle of the night, has snapped something in him. He's mostly just angry now. The guilt's still there, but it's no longer enough to keep her here. What was holding him back more recently was not knowing how to handle the situation without some kind of confirmation, proof that she isn't actually in danger if we send her away. And honestly, he was also worried how their parents would react if they found out we kicked out the abused daughter. A few people asked for more examples of her behavior. It's not just wine anymore. We found empty vodka bottles hidden in the closet of the guest room. The arguments she gets into either with us or on the phone are loud, chaotic, and usually about money or how someone's wronged her. If we set even the smallest boundary, like asking her to clean up after herself or stop asking for cash, she spirals into defensive rants. The money she spends clearly isn't going toward anything stable. It's clothes, makeup, Ubers, drinks at bars, nothing that would help her get her own place or start fresh. And the men she brings around? Total strangers. She doesn't even seem to know their last names. After reading through your comments, one idea started to grow in my mind and it wouldn't go away. I needed to know the truth. Her story was full of gaps, and her behavior just didn't fit someone who was trying to recover from trauma. It made me sick to think she might have fabricated something as serious as abuse, but at the same time, the possibility felt more and more real. A few of you suggested looking into her claims, maybe even trying to contact her ex, David. The thought made me queasy. It felt invasive. And what if I was wrong? What if I was crossing a line I couldn't take back? But living like this, living in constant stress and uncertainty, was wearing us both down. And we couldn't figure out what to do unless we knew whether her story held any truth. If it was real, we needed to handle things with care. If it wasn't, then we had every right to ask her to leave immediately. So, I decided I had to find out. And I figured I was the better person to do it, not Mark. He's too close to the family dynamic, too emotionally tangled in everything. This was disrupting my life just as much, and I needed answers. I did something I never thought I'd do. I looked up Chloe's Facebook. She doesn't post much, but her profile was still up. I started scanning her friend list, looking for anyone named David who might match the vague information she'd shared about where they used to live. It took a while, but I eventually found a guy with the right first name and a last name I'd never heard before. His profile photo showed him with Chloe, definitely a couple, and the photo was dated about a year ago. His location matched what she'd told us. I stared at the screen for what felt like an hour, heart racing. Finally, I opened Messenger and sent him a message. I introduced myself as Mark's wife, Chloe's sister-in-law, and said she'd been staying with us for almost 2 months after claiming she'd escaped an abusive relationship. I told him her behavior was creating real problems and that there were serious inconsistencies in her story. I asked if he'd be open to talking, just so we could understand what really happened. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't say he was lying or she was. I just explained what we'd been told and that we were trying to get some clarity. I hit send and instantly felt sick. To my surprise, he responded about 3 hours later. David said he was shocked, completely blindsided, that Chloe was telling people he was abusive. If anything, he seemed relieved that someone was finally reaching out to him. We ended up messaging for over an hour that night. I won't go into all the details, but the picture he painted was completely different. According to David, Chloe was the one who caused most of the chaos. He described her as unpredictable and emotionally volatile, someone who accused him constantly, got jealous easily, and tried to control every aspect of his life. He said she threw things during fights, though she never hit him, just damaged stuff around the house. He mentioned how she drank heavily and would disappear for days after arguments, running up debt on shared credit cards and threatening to hurt herself if she didn't get her way. He said she'd vanish without telling him, probably staying with her parents, and wouldn't respond to calls or texts. David said the last straw came when Chloe got drunk at a party one of her friends was hosting. She picked a loud fight with him in front of everyone there and then vanished. When he got home, she was gone. She'd left behind a note that said she was leaving him because he was suffocating her. He hadn't heard a word from her since, not directly, anyway. Her parents had called him, furious and accusing him of mistreating her based on whatever story Chloe had told them. But he had no idea she was now saying he had physically abused her, and he genuinely seemed disturbed by that. He walked me through several incidents, even giving dates and details, and weirdly enough, some of them lined up with vague things Chloe had mentioned to us. Only his version of events painted a very different picture. And to be honest, what he described matched almost perfectly with what we were dealing with now. After the conversation ended, I just sat there in silence for a while, letting it sink in. I didn't feel relief, not really. It was more like this cold, hard anger mixed with a sharp sense of clarity. I took screenshots of everything we'd talked about, just in case, and then I went to find Mark, who was in his home office. I told him we needed to talk and shut the door behind me. I explained everything I'd done and showed him the messages. He didn't say anything at first, just read them slowly, his expression shifting from surprise to disbelief to something closer to worn-out acceptance. He wasn't mad that I reached out to David. Instead, he just said quietly, "I knew it. I knew something didn't add up. I should have trusted my gut." What really hit him was the betrayal, Chloe lying to us, dragging us into her mess, and making us feel like the bad guys for questioning it. He was furious at her for the manipulation, but also at himself for letting the abuse claim override his instincts. We ended up talking for another hour. There was no more indecision. We both agreed she needed to leave. Immediately. The only question was how. We didn't want a huge confrontation, especially not knowing how she'd react. We decided to sleep on it and talk to her together the next morning. Update 2. This update picks up the weekend right after I contacted David and Mark and I agreed that Chloe had to go. It was late Thursday night when we made that decision, and from that moment, the energy in the house shifted. We didn't confront her right away, we needed a plan. We agreed to wait until Saturday morning to talk to her. That gave us Friday to prepare mentally and think through how we'd handle it. We didn't want to jump her out of nowhere or start something chaotic. We figured if we both stayed calm and presented a united front, it might go smoother. But I think Chloe could sense something was up. On Friday, Mark and I kept things very surface level. We were polite, but cold. No small talk. No asking how her day went. Just short, neutral replies. She definitely noticed. She was more quiet than usual and didn't go out Friday night, which was rare for her. She mostly stayed in her room. A part of me hoped that maybe, just maybe, Saturday wouldn't blow up the way we feared. That hope didn't last long. Saturday came. Our plan was to sit her down after breakfast and have the talk. But she woke up late, around 11 a.m., looking groggy and a little wired. Before we could even start, she announced she had errands to run and lunch plans with a friend. She asked Mark for $50, and out of habit, or maybe just being caught off guard, he handed it to her. Before we could say anything else, she was out the door by noon. The rest of the afternoon was tense. We just waited, not sure if we'd missed our chance or if we'd need to try again later. Mark called his parents to give them a soft warning that things with Chloe weren't working out. He didn't mention David or the real reason just yet, just said that her behavior was causing major problems and we were probably going to ask her to find other arrangements soon. As expected, they were defensive and concerned for Chloe. They encouraged Mark to be patient. Classic. Chloe didn't come back that afternoon or early evening. Her shift at the bar wasn't until 7 p.m., and around 6, she texted Mark to say she'd met up with some people and was heading to work directly from there. We didn't hear from her again until 1:30 a.m. That's when we were jolted awake by shouting from downstairs. Not just her voice, there was a man yelling, too. We heard a loud bang, like furniture tipping over, followed by a crash that sounded like glass breaking. Mark and I flew out of bed and rushed down. The living room was a disaster. The coffee table was flipped over. A lamp was smashed on the floor. Chloe was standing near the wreckage, screaming at some guy we'd never seen before. He was holding one hand to his face and shouting back at her, looking both furious and scared. The air reeked of alcohol. Mark immediately stepped between them and yelled at both of them to stop. He asked the man what had happened. The guy, who looked completely rattled, said he'd met Chloe at the bar where she worked, they went drinking afterward, and she invited him back to our house. He said they were chatting in the living room when she suddenly got angry over something trivial, he honestly couldn't remember what, and just exploded. According to him, she started yelling through the lamp, and when he tried to leave, she came at him and scratched his face. He pointed to his cheek, and we saw deep, fresh scratches, bleeding. Chloe, of course, immediately flipped the narrative. She started yelling that he was the one who attacked her, that he was trying to take advantage of her. Her accusations were loud, jumbled, and all over the place. She was clearly drunk and flailing emotionally. The guy swore up and down that he just wanted to leave and that she was completely unhinged. Mark did his best to calm the situation down. He told Chloe to go to her room and asked the guy to wait outside while we sorted this out. But Chloe refused, still screaming, and the guy wouldn't leave without making it clear that she'd assaulted him. It felt like the entire situation was spinning out of control, and honestly, it felt unsafe. I caught Mark's eye, and we didn't even need to say a word. While he kept them separated, I walked to the kitchen, picked up my phone, and dialed 911. I kept it simple. I told the dispatcher there had been a domestic disturbance at our address involving a guest and a man she brought home. I explained that the man was claiming she assaulted him, and we needed help. I gave them our information and hung up. I hate that it had to come to that. But I couldn't see any other option. That's where I'm going to leave this update for now. I've got work to do, but I'll write another update in a few days. Update 3, it's now been 2 weeks since the night I had to call the police. The police showed up about 10 or 15 minutes after I made the call that early Sunday morning. 2 officers knocked on the door, and Mark let them in. The tension in the house was thick. Chloe had stopped screaming by then, but now she was slumped in a chair, crying in that dramatic, over-the-top way she does when she's cornered. The man, let's call him John, was standing near the door, visibly anxious. The coffee table was still flipped over, the lamp shattered on the floor. The officers immediately separated everyone. One took John outside to get his side of the story, while the other sat with Mark and me in the dining room, then tried to speak with Chloe in the living room. We told the officer everything we knew. Chloe had been living with us, she brought this man home from the bar, and we'd been woken in the middle of the night by yelling and crashing sounds. When we came downstairs, we found the chaos, furniture overturned, a broken lamp, and the two of them in a heated argument. We pointed out that John had visible scratches on his face and that Chloe was accusing him of attacking her, though we hadn't seen the actual fight, just the aftermath. We also mentioned that Chloe had been drinking heavily that night. The officer listened, stayed professional, and took detailed notes. Meanwhile, from the living room, we could clearly hear Chloe's version of events. She was crying, saying John had gotten aggressive when she asked him to leave, that she had only acted in self-defense, and that she was scared. She brought up the same story about fleeing an abusive husband, trying to position herself again as the helpless victim. When the officer who had spoken with John came back inside, he said John wanted to press charges for assault. He showed them the scratches again, and they took photos of his face, the broken lamp, and the general mess in the room. They went back to Chloe and told her John intended to file a complaint. That's when she lost it again. She denied everything, screaming that he was lying, that it was all his fault. But the scratches on his face and the wrecked living room told a different story. The officers said they would file a report and pass it on to the prosecutor's office, who would decide whether to press charges. Because it looked like a misdemeanor-level assault and no one witnessed the physical contact firsthand, they didn't arrest her then and there. But they did take down everyone's information and warned both parties about the seriousness of the situation. They told John he should leave the house, and he was more than happy to go. Before they left, the officers had a firm conversation with Chloe, letting her know she could be facing legal consequences if things escalated further. After about an hour, they were gone. The silence that followed was thick and bitter. Chloe turned on us immediately, rage in her voice, accusing us of betraying her, of calling the cops, of choosing a stranger over our own family. But Mark didn't let her spiral for long. He cut in, voice steady, and said, "We know you lied, Chloe. We know what really happened with David. He told us everything. You were the problem in that marriage." She froze. Her face went pale. Then she looked at me and asked, "You talked to him?" I stepped forward. "Yes. I did. And what he told us matches exactly what we've seen here these past 2 months." Mark jumped back in. "You attacked someone you dragged into our house. You got the police involved. And worst of all, you used us. You lied about something serious, something horrible, just to get a free place to stay and keep living this reckless life. You need to pack your things. You're not spending another night here." She immediately launched into her usual routine, arguing, crying, begging. She said we couldn't kick her out, that she had nowhere else to go. Claimed David had ruined her life, that our parents would kill her. The guilt tripping was thick, but we didn't budge. Mark stood firm and said again, "Pack your bags. You're leaving. Tonight." It turned ugly fast. She shoved clothes into her suitcase while sobbing and muttering insults at us. Every few minutes, she tried to bait us into arguing, bringing up old family drama, saying Mark had always hated her, trying to paint herself as the victim again. We didn't take the bait. We just stood there quietly and waited. After about an hour, she finally got on the phone with someone, whispering angrily, probably arranging a ride. Then she stormed out of the guest room with her suitcase and backpack. At the door, she gave us one last look full of hate and spat, "You'll regret this. You'll see." And then she left, slamming the door behind her. We stood by the window and watched as she got into a car a few minutes later. We didn't recognize the vehicle, and we didn't care. She was gone. The immediate aftermath was quiet but heavy. First thing we did was clean up the living room. We tossed the broken lamp in the trash, put the furniture back in place. The very next day, we changed every lock on the house. Later that Sunday, Mark called his parents. He told them everything. That Chloe had lied about David. That we had verified it ourselves. That she'd brought a stranger home, attacked him, and the police were called. That we asked her to leave for good. As expected, they were shocked. At first, they didn't want to believe she had lied. Then they got upset about the police being involved. We heard all the usual excuses. Where will she go? She needs help. But Mark didn't let them guilt him. He told them straight, "Chloe needs more help than we can give. She needs therapy. Maybe rehab. But she can't stay with us after everything she did, not after lying and becoming violent." He told them they could help her if they wanted to, but our door was closed. It was a hard conversation, and things are definitely strained with his parents now. They haven't come out and said it directly, but it's clear they blame us at least a little for not sticking it out. As for Chloe, we haven't heard a single word from her since she walked out that night. Mark's parents told us she's staying with them for now. Apparently, she's denying everything, still claiming John attacked her and saying we blew everything out of proportion. She's also doubling down on her story about David, acting like we misunderstood the whole thing. We don't know if John actually followed through with the assault charges. The police haven't contacted us again, so we're in the dark on that front. But for now, the house is calm again. Peaceful. It feels like ours again. Still, the entire experience left a scar. It's unsettling, chilling, even how someone can use a narrative of victimhood to manipulate and twist reality, while avoiding any responsibility for the chaos they cause. Mark is dealing with the fallout with his parents, and the two of us are just trying to process the stress of everything that happened. It's going to take time. But we're finally starting to feel safe again in our own home.